Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Julian Bonnici, joined with me is Sam Vassallo. Today's episode is brought to you by Miles Express. Miles Express is an independent global contractor offering goods, transport and logistics solutions. The company provides local courier distribution services for e-commerce businesses looking to deliver packaging to their customers and professionals who are looking to courier deliver their documents. Head over to www.milesxp.com to find out more. Today's stories are as follows. Game-changing AstraZeneca vaccines arrive in Malta. Outrage after loads of no trespassing notices appear on Rabat land. Dartal Providenza rejects €500,000 Catco donation by Adrian Dalia. Convicted abuser who threatened to make estranged wife cry blood granted bail. And finally, another couple asked to pay $50,000 to keep their home after a medieval foundation registered it as their own. And super importantly, at the end of this episode, we've got a really interesting interview with Sebastian Ripard, the CEO of Bolt, to discuss issues about drivers within their ranks. Sam, we're going to kick this off.
For sure. So we've got a game-changing new vaccine that's arrived in Malta, the AstraZeneca vaccine. It's officially arrived yesterday. Now Malta has supplies from 3 producers. We have Pfizer, Moderna and AstraZeneca. Chris Fenn, our health minister, praised the arrival as a cannon used against the spread of the virus. Malta has one of the best uptakes of the COVID-19 vaccine. In fact, we've seen a significant drop in over 85-year-olds hospitalized, and this coincides with the cohort being inoculated. The first cohort is actually finishing receiving the first and second jab, and now we're on to the second cohort, which will involve elderly over 75 and other frontliners. Super positive news, I think, to start us off.
Yes, it's a positive, maybe we're starting to see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. Just a bit of a recap on the cases of yesterday. We had 100 new cases, 157 recoveries, and 3 people died, unfortunately. The active number of cases keep on going down, but obviously be cautious out there, continue wearing your masks. Hopefully we'll be out of this soon enough. On to our next story. Environmentalists have been left outraged after a number of spray painted notices appeared on the rocks on land in Blata Talmer in the limits of Rabat. The signs painted in black paint sort of said something like private property, private footpath, no trespassing, completely adorning the rocks in the area, obviously raising concerns about privacy issues on Maltese land. Nobody knows where to stand. I'm sure it's not the first time you're walking to the countryside and suddenly you're blocked by a massive private sign. The issue around privacy of land in Malta sort of has been under the microscope in recent weeks, particularly after MDA head Sandro Kertkuti blocked off access to former Rihbay, raising concerns among activists and the like. They're pledging action and stuff like that. Let's see how the situation develops.
Indeed, it seems like another day, another sign on public land. Last year, in fact, a Frenchman was charged with spray painting on Maltese land without permission for a marathon. And it's like we're constantly fighting for, our own land. In fact, recently farmers are constantly fighting for their livelihood in Bumarat after proposal for a roundabout. Hopefully citizens can keep on fighting and keep their foot down on the fact that, we have a right to this public land. On to our next story. So Dartal Providenza rejects a €500,000 Catco donation given by Adrian Dalia. So just to remind you, Dartal Providenza held a New Year's Day telethon. And Adrian Dalia, was the kind of star of the show. He gave 2 fat checks, €22,000 from his campaign, and also presented a €500,000 check from Catco Group, which was the biggest donation of the night, but unfortunately didn't give in all the required documentation for the auditing process, so they will not be accepting this check. Catco, in another revelation, it's a Tunisian business known to invest in Malta, and they were also sponsoring the Slima football group, Slima Wanderers team, who are severely in financial woe, with some players reportedly not being able to eat or even get fuel for their cars. So, Are we surprised? I'm not sure.
No, yes, this Catco donation fronted by Adrian Delia has, long been a bit dodgy, a bit murky since it was actually submitted. I remember just a few days after the donation was submitted to Dartar Providenza, Catco's chairman even didn't know that Adrian Delia wasn't the head of Dartar Providenza. He sort of thought he was. It spells, quite a bit of a dark week for Adrian Delia in general. Lovin Malta over the weekend continued publishing stories related to his right-hand man, Pier Portelli, and his links to Jorgen Fenech, the main suspect in the Daphne Caruana Galizia assassination, how they were communicating and colluding on particular articles. This was while Fenech was already outed to be the owner of 17 Black, which is a Dubai-based company linked to widespread corruption in Malta. And before we go on to our fourth story, we've just got a short video from our sponsors today, Miles Express.
At Miles Express, we go the extra mile to deliver your packages and documents on time, every time. Whether you're an online retailer that needs to deliver parcels to your customers or a professional looking to courier your documents, you can rest assured your clients will receive the professional service they deserve. We deliver all around Malta and Gozo, making sure your deliveries are carried out efficiently so you can focus on your business. Miles Express, the real express people.
Our fourth story of today deals with a convicted abuser who threatened his wife that he would let her make her cry blood and disappear, and being granted bail by a Maltese court. Very shocking, this was over domestic violence charges after the husband, Eder Edris Guma Faraj, threatened his wife and terrorized his children in the month of January 2021. This included claims of a text message that he had with 1,000 euros, he'll make her disappear, he'll make her cry blood, and he could eventually even take his children away from her. Bizarrely, the man was still granted bail despite the prosecution objecting to it, because obviously this man had previous convictions of domestic violence. He's been put on the bail book against a personal guarantee, and there's a protection order that he can't visit his children and wife for the time being. However, given obviously recent concerns over domestic violence and femicide in Malta, it raises the bizarre question why the court even allowed this, given his previous convictions. Are we going to just wait, till another person dies for the court to take action? It's getting quite obscene.
Exactly. This just comes a few days after we had a harrowing story of an abuser threatening his ex with a screwdriver, saying get ready to get buried, and yet, unfortunately, we're complacent. I mean, there are 5 reports of domestic violence taken to the police every single day, and unfortunately, setting up a domestic support unit and simulation for empathy for police is clearly not enough. We need to take more action when it comes to this harrowing issue. On to our last story before we get on to our guests. So a Nadur couple has been asked to pay 50,000 euros to keep their home after a medieval foundation registered it as their own. So 11 years after buying a 1-story home in Nadur on a freehold basis, a Gozten couple was asked to pay 50,000 euros to a medieval foundation that has claimed ownership of the land. So essentially, to give you a bit of background on this, a Gozten lawyer named Carmelo Gallia registered 2 plots of land in the area pertaining to 4 dozen housing units that sit under the ownership of Beneficiutas Sant'Antonio della Navarra. It was set up in 1675 to raise funds for pious deeds from the lease of vast lands in Gozo belonging to a noble woman, Cosmana Navarra. She was a very rich, religious Sicilian woman. These lands were registered a year ago by a lawyer who in fact was actually involved in the sale of the property to this couple. Now obviously dozens of Nadur residents are in a similar situation. Some of them have been there for generations, and when this land was registered, hundreds turned up to the land registry frantically to check if their property was still under their names. And this lawyer is basically demanding tens of thousands from these families, essentially threatening their livelihood and ability to stay in their houses.
Yes, it's a very interesting case. It's a joint investigation from Lovin Malta and The Shift. If there's one thing working in the residents' favour is previous court judgments on the matter. So the foundation has actually taken the issue to court once before in 1956, trying to evict residences from the area. However, a court of appeal disagreed with them, finding discrepancies in their actual claims to the land themselves. This actually works for people living there at the moment, because the case will be considered already settled. So a judge might not even be willing to hear the case in front of a court. The foundation has tried to do this before, as well in Ireland 2003, but the court sort of disagreed with their claims once again, noting discrepancies as they did before. That's it in terms of news stories for today. Just a reminder that today's episode is brought to you by Miles Express. Miles Express is an independent global contractor offering goods transport and logistical solutions. The company provides a local courier distribution service for e-commerce businesses looking to deliver packages to their customers and professionals who are looking to courier deliver their documents. Head over to www.milesxp.com to find out more. Stay tuned. We've got Seb Report from Bolt to discuss employment practices within the Bolt food side of the company. Just a short video. Stay tuned.
At Miles Express, we go the extra mile to deliver your packages and documents on time, every time. Whether you're an online retailer that needs to deliver parcels to your customers or a professional looking to courier your documents, you can rest assured your clients will receive the professional service they deserve. We deliver all around Malta and Gozo, making sure your deliveries are carried out efficiently so you can focus on your business. Miles Express. The real express people.
Hello and welcome back to Lovin Daily. Today we have Seb Report from Bolt. Hi Seb, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for the warm introduction.
You're very welcome. So obviously everybody sort of knows what Bolt is, what Bolt does, what Bolt Food does. Unfortunately, it's been in the news recently over concerns that drivers are losing almost half their agencies to recruitment agencies. People have flagged this maybe as an illegal employee practice. Is it at all?
So I think there are two issues. I mean, as Bolt, we offer a platform and a marketplace where restaurants, courier drivers and eaters can come together and interact with each other. Traditionally, we actually engage self-employed couriers. In fact, our fleet is 85% self-employed couriers, mainly Maltese and EU nationals. But in some cases, we have what we call fleet operators, whether they're also a recruitment agency or not. I don't know, and it's a bit irrelevant to me. And these fleet operators essentially come to us and say, look, we operate a fleet of couriers, and we want to put our couriers on the Bolt platform and provide courier services. And that's fine with us, and they can be on our platform and provide courier services. So in the news, what has transpired is that some of these agencies take 50% of the amount that of the revenue that the couriers bring in. Whether this is illegal or not, personally, I don't think so, and I think it's a bit of a technicality that is misleading. It makes for a nice headline, but it's really misleading. What's clearly important is that if a fleet operator employs a courier, that employee has to make sure that they're working the right amount of hours, receiving at least minimum wage, all of those benefits and responsibilities that the employer has for the employee. In essence, what happens with our app is that the amount of the couriers are paid per delivery. So if an employer has a bunch of couriers, they will be taking in revenue for their employer. And then that revenue is shared between the employer and the employee, because the employer provides the vehicles, provides a bunch of other costs. I mean, it's a bit like saying that a cashier in a supermarket doesn't take home all of the money that goes through her till. She gives that money back to the supermarket and then gets paid her wage. So similarly with us, the courier, an employed courier, which is the minority in Bolt's case, doesn't take home all of the revenue that they make. It gives all of that revenue to their employer, and then the employer pays them a wage.
Okay, so I think maybe also a root of these concerns maybe delves into who's actually employed by these agencies. So probably most of these people employed with these agencies are third country nationals who already are facing so many struggles, and in terms of probably a vulnerable group in Malta, being maybe taken advantage of or exploited in such a radical way. 50% of their wage is a large cut, particularly when a lot of them don't really have the same rights as normal employees do.
I think they have the same rights as normal employees. I think what the situation is that obviously if you're a self-employed courier on Bolt's platform, you're going to be earning more than a courier that is employed through a fleet operator, because just by the fact that there is this fleet operator, there's another person in the middle that is providing services probably for the couriers, like providing them with vehicles, paying for their fuel, etc., but is also doing it for a profit. So they're going to take their cut. So whereas with a self-employed courier, they have to provide all of the equipment themselves, but they take everything that they earn. So certainly the couriers that are employees of fleet operators are going to be earning less than self-employed couriers.
No, it's fair to say. So what guarantees do Bolt place on these agencies to ensure that workers aren't being exploited or are giving the fair
I mean, it's
cut?
definitely a concern. And I guess part of the concern is that you'll find typically most of the couriers that are employed by fleet operators are third country nationals, because if they were allowed, who are not allowed to be self-employed, because if they were EU citizens or Maltese citizens, they would opt to be self-employed because they're going to be earning more, whereas third country nationals are not allowed to be self-employed, which means that the ability for them to be mobile within the economy is limited, and therefore it's probably easier for them to be taken advantage of. So I think there is some onus on the government to make sure that especially TCN's rights are being respected. So us as Bolt, we don't see ourselves as the regulator. We don't see that we are the person that's meant to ensure that all of the people that work with us, whether they are fleet operators or restaurants or all of these different businesses on our platform, are abiding by employment law, paying their taxes and things like that. That is down to the regulator to do that. But we're noticing obviously that this is an issue, and we want to be cooperative with all of the stakeholders, whether it is government or GW or whoever it may be, and see what it is that we can do. Like, we're going to issue a sort of position paper on this, where I think there just generally needs to be more discussion around the platform economy, because it's quite a new thing. It has a lot of benefits, but it also, like everything, there are pros and cons to it. So, and our legislation doesn't really cater for such a tech-based platform economy. So I think we need to have a discussion around this and figure out how we can make sure all the people involved's rights are being respected.
Okay, but surely, I get your point, there has to be maybe some onus on the regulator, but surely even the business operators, who are also benefiting, right, of the structure should also have an onus to ensure that these operators are acting responsibly with their employees.
Yes, and it's definitely in our interest that they are acting responsibly. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to issue a charter where basically all of the people, all the companies that work with us, whether they're fleet operators or whatever, will warrant that they are abiding by all of these sort of legal practices when it comes to employment. I think that would be a good first step.
Okay, to move on maybe beyond the couriers who work for agencies, let's go into the drivers themselves who actually currently work in Bolt. Out of curiosity, how many drives does the driver need to do to make minimum wage within an hour?
On average, a courier will earn €4.90 per delivery, and they do between 1.8 to 2 deliveries per hour. So that's like about €9 per hour.
Okay,
They will have some running costs to that. We estimate that over a month, a self-employed courier will be, after their running costs of their vehicle, fuel, insurance, etc., making around 1,200 to 1,500.
Okay, so obviously when Bolt first came on the scene, Bolt Food, maybe a year or so ago, it's really almost revolutionized the sector, right? It was its own player, there was no real competitor. Since then, though, we've seen the market grow more and more oversaturated. With maybe now pay starting to drop to keep more competitive. Are you starting to feel that? Is it sort of a race to the bottom in terms of pay?
It's definitely becoming more competitive, but at the same time, competition is a good thing, and it means that as more competitors are coming to the market itself is also growing. Is it a race to the bottom? Well, our intention is to add value to all of our all people involved in this platform, whether it's restaurants, so we're giving restaurants an outlet to make sales, especially during COVID. I think that's really relevant. We're giving the public access to good food at very valuable and cheap rates. But we need to keep all parties happy, including the couriers. And ultimately, if we can't pay the couriers, and it's not just minimum wage that's important, if we can't pay them something that is relevant to the market, so something that they could earn elsewhere, then we'll start to lose these couriers. So competition is going to make all of the players look to be cost effective, but we can't just drop the rates of couriers significantly, otherwise they'll all leave.
And when it comes to the issue of them all being on self-employed contracts, now obviously it does give them flexibility on one hand, but some people might argue that it does free you up maybe from certain regulations in terms of employee law, right? Like in terms of a minimum pay per month and stuff like that. Is this something you see, or is it
that it frees ourselves up from these obligations? Well, on the platform, we have both employed couriers and self-employed. So, especially with the ones that are employed, we need to make sure that there's the ability for them to earn more than minimum wage. And there's not just more than minimum wage, but that the couriers earning minimum wage and that the fleet operators can take their cut on that as well. So, our focus is not so much to see, are we allowing the couriers to earn minimum wage, or are we allowing the restaurants to earn X? It's just sort of look at the whole thing and make sure it's working for all stakeholders.
And just something that I've thought of. There's also maybe a bit concern about some drivers, particularly maybe ones who are working with agencies or maybe outside your direct control, in terms of motorcycling licenses and the license to ride on the road. Is this something you look into, and is this something you can guarantee all the time?
We definitely, everyone that signs up with us, we check that they have a valid driving license. Like we check that they have other certificates in order for them to complete that job. But at the end of the day, it is still their responsibility to drive within the remit of the law.
Oh.
And then I think it's Transport Malta's responsibility to be giving fines and regulating the driving.
Okay, and so just to maybe close off a bit, so you were talking a bit before about a white paper, a charter, are there any particular regulations you think need to be introduced today to maybe safeguard some things in the industry?
No, not off the top of our head in terms of regulations.
Okay, but so in terms of maybe securing at least some rights to the couriers, that they're not put in a situation where almost half their wage is taken away from them, right? Because 50% does seem like quite a sizable figure.
I think it's going to be hard to regulate, what cut the fleet operator is going to make. Like you can't, and that's a problem for all industries. How much should a journalist be paid over here, or a freelance journalist be paid over here, etc. So I think the law already has a way of regulating this. Now, whether it needs to enforce it and be more visible, regulating, etc., then that's it. But I think from a legal point of view, there is that infrastructure for normal employment. Now, for a platform economy, there might not really be that infrastructure yet. So we need to understand probably a bit better the sort of value that this flexible work is giving, and maybe the risks of it as well.
Okay, and so did you actually maybe view a courier with Bolt as somebody who should view that employment maybe not as a full-time job, but something more flexible to work around, almost like a side project to earn a bit of extra money on?
Yes, that's definitely how it's intended. That it's providing sort of flexibility into the marketplace. There are people who are, by making an order, asking for a courier service at all hours of the day, some hours more than others. And this is a great way that anyone who is can't work in a 9-to-5 environment because they need to look after, they have other responsibilities, either with kids or they've been out of the marketplace for a while, etc. We're giving access to a lot of people to this marketplace to make some income and feed themselves and look after their family. So I think it's kind of down to the individual to make it work for themselves. And we want to see that flexibility where we are not forced to be very rigid and then we're going to make the work only work for a very small cohort of people. We want to keep it as open as possible, that this kind of work can work for many different types of people. Certainly if all of the self-employed had to become employees, they will certainly be earning less than they're earning at the moment. And they will be restricted in the hours that they work, and we will probably see about a quarter of them leave because it will no longer be the type of work that meets their requirements.
Okay, thanks a lot for joining us today. So it was a really interesting conversation. Let us know what you think about it in the comments below. That's all from us from today, and remember, have a day full of lovin'.